Hey team, hope you're well. Today I'm going to make a video going into depth about what I actually ultimately think is a better thing to be doing, whether it's going directly to the bank if you're wanting to do an application for buying a new home or get a better solution for your existing lending, or work with a broker. What are the pros and cons of both? Obviously, with me being a broker, I'm going to be somewhat biased, right? Like my intention with this channel is to win your business, but ultimately today I'm going to just be as transparent as I can. I'm going to give you some scenarios and stories of pros and cons in both scenarios. Okay, so that's the objective with today's video. I firstly want to touch up with the pros of going directly to the bank. So this is when you might search online and just say, look, I'm looking at buying a home loan. That might be with ASB, ANZ, Westpac, any of those lenders. Getting in contact with them. Maybe you're dealing with a mobile mortgage manager or a bank manager or someone directly, right? That's helping you with your needs and doing it. Okay, now some things in regards to maybe where that could be better than working with, say, a mortgage broker is speed. Sometimes if you're going to a bank, you might get actually a faster solution than, say, through a broker, right? So for example, for us brokers, we're technically part of the third party option at the bank. So at the banks, they have got like the direct response team, so they handle those applications, but they also have like a third party team. So any applications that are coming from a third party, like a broker, it gets designated to this team. And normally there's like a queue time that's associated with a third party application. Every bank, has a certain amount of assessors, and depending on their, the supply of applications that are coming in determines how long the queue time will be at each respective bank. So maybe for a queue time at most main banks, it might range from like 5 to 7 working days to get a response. But because the direct team doesn't necessarily deal with a third party team and who's employed there at most banks, maybe you can get a response faster if you go directly. It's a little bit frustrating from my end, because obviously I like to operate in a fair market, and maybe I should get the same products as if, you're going directly, right? Because I ultimately am in the space to get advice. I get paid in the event I arrange mortgage lending, but it's just part of the game. I get it from the bank's point of view, why they're doing this and why they might be able to offer a solution faster than directly. But this is just part of it, right? So that's a bit of a a bit of a pro actually for why maybe going directly to the bank could be better. Maybe the speed is faster. It might not necessarily always be the case, but that's something I would definitely consider a pro or something to consider. Another thing is around cashback. So I've noticed something specifically in the last 2 years while I've been in the industry is normally when it comes from a third party. I obviously know what every single bank will offer in terms of cashbacks, especially on new lending. When new lending is arranged, and if it makes sense for the bank, they always will offer some sort of cashback incentive, and I know what they are. At the time, day on day, and if they're changing or not, or whatever's happening, right? So I know what a client is eligible for if they go to a new bank. And sometimes when I ask the existing bank if they will give a cashback solution, in my experience coming from a third party, I'm not nearly as successful as when clients go directly and ask for a cashback. Maybe it's part of their, policy or protocol to not necessarily offer retention cashback is the term used with their existing bank. But I find directly, I've heard stories where like they've gone directly to the bank, asked for retention cashback, and they've offered a really, really competitive offer that I'm not necessarily eligible for. So that's a bit of a problem with the banks. If you're going directly with them, I would say it's a very mixed bag. I don't necessarily know exactly how it's determined of what you get. It probably depends on the person you're dealing with, the bank specifically. It's a bit of a mixed bag, but I know there's definitely a higher success rate of people requesting cashbacks directly compared to, say, if I'm doing it and representing them from a third party aspect. Okay, now so those are two things directly. Now I've had 3 specific stories that come to mind where I have been a little bit gutted personally in all of these scenarios, and going directly has been a better outcome for the client than what I was able to provide them, right? So they came to me and they said, hey Jack, can you please help with the scenario? I've tried to help, but they've actually been able to get a better outcome going directly to the bank than using myself, which is a little bit gutting. Obviously they've gotten a solution and an outcome, which is great, but it's kind of deflating me being, I suppose, a advisor and expert in the space, but they've been able to go direct and get a better outcome, right? So one example I have is I actually had been referred these people through my sister's partner's parents. Okay, so to me this was quite an important deal. I really wanted to help them and give them the best solution, obviously. And I said to them, with the position, I really think with the policy and all of my understanding and expertise, the max borrowing you could probably afford in your scenario is maybe 700K. That's what I told them from all the data I saw. And then they were actually able to go direct and get a much higher amount of borrowing to buy the property that they wanted to buy. They were actually approved, I think, to buy up to maybe somewhere between like 1 million to 1,200,000. It was a lot more than what I could get. And I think purely because of that was the fact that they went directly to the bank. I saw no solution or a way where like coming from a third party, they could borrow more than that. Maybe there was, and maybe I didn't see it, and I guess I've got to take that on the chin. But that was quite deflating. Obviously, a referral, someone quite close to me, I wasn't able to personally get a good outcome for, but they were able to get a better outcome directly, right? So that's something you've got to consider. Sometimes there could be a scenario I can't get something directly done on mine, but the bank directly might be able to give a solution for the client that they want. Another one as well is I had been working with a client for ages. This was maybe like 6 months. They were looking to buy their first home, and there were some complications with how the third party team was assessing the application with the building. So there was, for example, some like weather tightness issues. There was something with the cladding that the assessor from the third party wasn't happy with. And then I said to the client, look, I've tried really hard. I've taken it to 3 lenders. I'm not able to get a solution here based on what they're telling me. There's nothing I can really do here. I think though, there could be a route where you could try directly if you're really motivated to buy this property. I wasn't, a massive advocate for them buying this property, but ultimately it's the client's decision at the end of the day. I give them the information and try to give them the solution they're after, right? And make sure, it makes the most financial sense for their position. But what ended up happening is they actually went direct through the bank that I had been basically declined at because of the, condition of the property and them not being happy with the security, basically. They went direct and got approved. And I was like personally quite triggered about this whole outcome, but ultimately again, them going direct got a better solution than what had been going through me in this scenario, right? It's very, very rare that happens, but it did happen. And ultimately them going direct got them the solution they were after. So that's another scenario. Another one is recently I've been helping a client and a bit of thing I'm dealing with them is I'm struggling to understand them. English is not their first language, and they went directly to the bank and dealt with someone that speaks the same language as them, and they were able to get an approval super fast. I've been struggling to try, get all the information and everything for them, but they've actually had probably a better experience so far going directly than with me. Maybe if there was like another third party broker that spoke the same language as them as their first language, maybe they would be able to get a pretty similar solution direct. But I think they were able to get like an approval or a pre-approval for a property, in fact, which is even more hard to do right now, especially when you have less than 20% deposit like these guys have. They were able to get a solution directly, which is normally pretty challenging in my world at the moment, trying to get that solution again. So there's just some quick scenarios of like, okay, these aspects were actually better going direct for those specific scenarios, right? That being said, though, not everything is sunshine and rainbows probably going directly to the bank, right? There's a reason why probably most lending in New Zealand, I actually don't know the ratios off the top of my head, but I know that more than half of the mortgage lending arranged in New Zealand is currently done by mortgage advisors and mortgage brokers like myself, because the infrastructure and the advice being given is only reflective of that specific bank's protocol, right? They don't necessarily know what other banks, they can't advise on other banking solutions, right? And not all the time is just using one bank solution the best for that sort of client. And that's why brokers are quite, like they're taking up a lot of the market share in terms of, lending that is arranged through this third party aspect. I think in Australia, I heard some sort of stat the other day that maybe like 70 to 80% of all lending arranged in Australia is done through brokers. So the reason why as well, like we'll get into the pros now, is regarding the advice that brokers can give, right? So in these scenarios, like I just kind of mentioned, that specific bank can only, give them information about their products and solutions, not other banks. They can't necessarily give advice on lending structures. So in the event, say that I'm helping a client and trying to give them a solution for their needs, I can talk them through aspects regarding, okay, what rates they can expect across all of the lenders right now, and what's maybe going to be an appropriate structure or loan terms to consider for the position moving forward. Banks can't necessarily do that, right? They can't give advice on those aspects. Another thing too is regarding, okay, like with their position, how much they can borrow each week. We can actually calculate and determine, okay, what banks can you borrow more for the outcome or solution you're wanting to have. Maybe you don't necessarily want to borrow more, but maybe the enabling factor for you guys for a client of mine to buy a property they want might be to go to a bank where they could borrow more funds, right? And that's advice and input I can give compared to, say, if you were just going to go direct and deal with someone directly at one specific bank. There are probably other scenarios too, like, I might be able to share, how different banks are valuing properties, right? Like there are bank valuations that are used, and I can cross-reference them with other banks and see, what bank valuations coming higher, maybe because of what they're trying to achieve, that makes more sense to go with that bank because of how they're valuing a property and all of those things, right? So there's so many different little bits of advice that can be delivered, hand holding the client through the whole process of buying a property. I suppose directly with the bank, there's probably some input that can be shared with the person, client is maybe dealing with the bank directly, but ultimately that's something I pride myself on personally. Maybe some other brokers wouldn't go that far into the process of what I do. When someone's looking to buy a property, I really care and try help them the whole way through. But anyway, the advice thing is such a huge thing from working with a mortgage advisor as what you get. The other thing is, regarding like the expertise, obviously I'm seeing clients' positions all the time. I guess these people at the bank are too, but, I can give, a lot of advice on maybe some more complex things. Like, for example, maybe having a split banking portfolio where you're not cross-collateralized with all of your properties with one bank. Or, for example, doing things like refinances and moving because one bank will give you a better solution for your existing lending. Another thing is maybe negotiating on a purchase price, because I look at all of the data on different areas and regions in New Zealand. I can give input on that compared to, say, if you're going to buy this property relative to another property. All of that expertise is delivered in my service or probably other broker service to an extent, compared to what you would just get at the bank, where they're basically informed to just show you what the products that are on offer, trying to get you approved, and not really give any advice or expertise necessarily. Like there are some people at the bank that would be awesome to deal with, and maybe even are better than a lot of brokers, or maybe have more understanding than a lot of brokers, and elements of these things surrounding advice and expertise. But I would say generally, the level of this is definitely more so there on the broker side than what I've heard from people going directly to the bank. So there's that aspect to consider. The other thing is, obviously, I work with all of the lenders. I see all of their products. I know what all of their rates are across the board. Like I've got this calculator here of like at the time of right now what each bank is offering in terms of rates right now. So there can be a comparison there. I get updated basically anytime any of the main bank lenders change their rates. So I'm informed and I know what's going on, right? So I know that my clients aren't getting pinged, or there's opportunities for price matches and all this sort of stuff all the time, and I can hold banks to account to get the best outcome for my client, right? So that's another thing. And I also obviously know all of their policies and products and those things to consider too, which can, I can display, different scenarios for different clients depending on what they're trying to do and what would be the best solution for them, right? So there's that to think about. And the other thing, which I think is a very big thing, is it saves time. It saves time as well. Like if you're going to spend ages trying to research each bank and what is going to be the best solution, it's going to take a lot of time. If you're interested in getting the best solution for your mortgage, you're probably a busy person. If you're trying to get more mortgage lending arranged, right? You probably have a full-time job, and then having to do your due diligence and determine what bank is best. It takes a lot of time, and you have to find out who is going to be the best person to deal with directly at the bank. You're going to have to book branch appointments or do all of the stuff. But working with a broker, they already know what the best solution probably is going to be, or show you what some options are, and they can do applications really fast and at scale once they have all the required documents from you. So there's all those things to consider. There's probably like a bunch of other things, I guess, as well. But I kind of just wanted to highlight again, like, in some occasions and majority of the time, because, we can see from the data that, majority of the mortgages arranged are coming from brokers now, that this is what is valuable to a lot of people. But, there are times and occasions, I must admit, that maybe going direct makes sense in some occasions, like I just displayed. So if you do want to have input as well from this, I guess it would be free technically from the bank as well, but it's also free for that advice, because in the event that we get paid, it's when we arrange and organize the lending for a client, right? That's when we get paid. So normally the service is free because we're going to get remunerated quite well from the bank when we arrange something. So there's not really any need to charge a fee or expense for our service too. So yeah, guys, anyway, that's sort of what I wanted to cover today. Just some things to highlight if you were weighing up your decision, if you just want to go direct or work with a broker like myself. That's really it. So if you enjoyed the video, or maybe you actually want to reach out to me and me do an analysis of your position, I'll leave all of my stuff in the description. There's like a form you can complete, and that will, just trigger me to maybe give you a call and see if there's something I can do. And I'll also leave some videos on the screen if you want to learn some other stuff and see some other videos I made. Cheers, guys.